Are there any free agents that the Chicago Bears can add to help Justin Fields? We talk about that next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barrett, and welcome back in. Thanks so much for tuning us on. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. For those listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, anywhere that you get your podcast, make sure to give us a 5-star. It helps us so much. So thank you so much for tuning back in. I'm excited for this one. This is probably like our third installment of free agency because, hey, we're just trying to build this roster and we got to know who's out there. And also, who might Ryan Poles actually be targeting in this free agency? Because this free agency is going to last quite some time. We're already past the main craziness. We're past the draft. So now, are the Bears done adding people? We already saw us add Tajay Sharp, Dante Pettis, and a couple others, but are we done? And are there some people that we might want to be looking out for as we get closer and closer to training camp? But like I said, thanks so much for tuning back in. And just for if this is your first time coming in, just want to let everyone know that every penny that I'm making for this podcast this month will be donated to my friend Colton, who's currently battling cancer. So thank you so much for listening and thanks for tuning in. Also, I'll leave a link in the description for his GoFundMe. We've already totally raised over $17,000. It's absolutely incredible. A lot of this is all friends and family of his that have chipped in. And if you have, thank you again so much. But let's get into the show. Let's get into this free agency. And like we said, with offense, we got to start with quarterback. And with this, I don't really think that we need to add anybody. I want to break down just first off, is there anybody that we should add? Or like, should we actually add somebody at a position? And right now at quarterback, we're good. But I do have to just call out one guy that has been added that we haven't talked about on this podcast. Nathan Peterman. Like, seriously, Nathan Peterman and Mike Glennon are like the two guys that if they get signed to a team, it's just a meme. It's just a joke. I don't love this signing at all. Yes, it's your third string quarterback. But guys, come on. Nathan Peterman is a gigantic joke that loves throwing interceptions. Like Ryan Poles, I know that if you have your third string quarterback in, chances are you're going to lose. At least like go for an AJ McCarron, a Josh Rosen, Garrett Gilbert, or someone young like James Morgan just got waived, or De'Aaron King. Even though he's probably not that great, like just get somebody that might have some upside that you know isn't Nathan Peterman. Like, just come on. I know I'm being nitpicky, but honestly, though, with this quarterback position, you're set though. In all seriousness, you have Trevor Siemian as your backup. You have Justin Fields. There's really no one else that you need to get. But like I said, AJ McCarron, Josh Rosen, Garrett Gilbert are just some people that if you don't want to have Nathan Peterman, you might want to be looking out for those guys at least on your team. But like we said, don't want to get too down in the nitty gritty. So let's move on to running back. And what's nice is these first two positions, I don't feel like we need to add anybody in, but I also just want to cover who's actually available. And at this running back position, it's very similar to quarterback. We don't need anybody here. We have David Montgomery. We have Khalil Herbert. You're set there. And then now you have Darrington Evans and also Treston Ebner. To me, you're set. They added also Demontre Tuggle. Don't know too much about him. We'll see if he's able to come on the roster. He's an undrafted rookie free agent. But really, yet again, fullback, running back, you're pretty much set. But I do want to call this out. Like I said, I want to at least mention who's available. Kalen Ballage, Peyton Barber, Devontae Booker, Latavius Murray, Corey Clement. What I'm getting at is there's a lot of good, solid number two options in case if a Montgomery, a Khalil Herbert were to go down. So it's at least good to keep in the backs of our minds that still late in free agency, a lot of running backs are available. And not saying let's sign them and then trade David Montgomery, but just next offseason, whatever's going on with David Montgomery, it's good to know that there's usually some sort of number two running backs that are at least still available. I just wanted to call that out too, in case if somebody were to go down, that there's still some people you can kind of bring in. Because to me, Herbert or Montgomery can definitely play as a number one running back. But like I said, nothing too crazy. So we're starting out with the two easiest positions. But now, guys, let's take a deep breath. We got to get into this wide receivers because the wide receivers are the biggest debate. I've seen people on Twitter, I've seen different shows, I've seen different people that have voices out there on Twitter and fans saying, "Hey, listen, the Bears have gotten so much better with wide receivers. It's not even close." And then other people are saying, "How can you say that? We've gotten rid of Allen Robinson and he's a super talented guy." Where I sit in it is kind of that, like, Allen Robinson is gone, and yes, Matt Nagy did not know how to use him last year and did not use him well. And because of that, you didn't see him actually get leveraged well. And this year, what's nice is this is going to be a run first team. You see that with the Packers. Yes, they have Aaron Rodgers, but their offense is honestly about the running game. It's about establishing a good run game and then using play action to set up the pass. And also, you look at San Francisco, same exact type of offense. So what's nice is the Bears have been saying this. They've been saying we don't necessarily need that big flashy number one wide receiver or anything like that. We're good with who we have. But I still want to at least break down who is available because a lot of the people that don't cover the Bears that I've heard talk about free agency, they're like, "Bears, why aren't you signing somebody? You can sign so many of these different veterans that are instant upgrades over who we have." So I just want to break that down, who is available, and also just who might be a good fit for the Bears. Because right now, let's just talk about it. Right now, to me, you have two people that are written in as your starters. Typically, you want three starters at the wide receiver spot, but right now you have Mooney and Pringle. Now, very similar to last year, if you remember, we had Robinson and Mooney, and now we have Pringle and Mooney. But with the third wide receiver spot, it was kind of a battle with Marquise Goodwin, Demir Bird, whoever was on the team, they basically battled that out. Jakeem Grant when he came in later on. But it's very similar to that. You have your two guys, but then at that number three spot, you don't necessarily have anybody for sure. Equanimous St. Brown, according to OurLads.com, which really is the big site that talks about depth charts, they're saying Equanimous St. Brown is the starter. But I know some of us are saying, well, what about Velus Jones Jr.? Well, what about Dante Pettis? We just added Dante Pettis, and we haven't talked about him much on this show. Dante Pettis is a solid guy when healthy. Keywords when healthy. He hasn't been healthy in ever. But when he's actually in, he kind of fits that mold of being able to be a slot player, being able to play outside, but also being able to break a lot of the tackles. Last year, or actually over his career, he plays about 40% in the slot. And what we're hearing with this team is that they really appreciate people that are versatile, just like a Dante Pettis. So to me, Dante Pettis could be that starter next to Equanimous St. Brown. But a lot like last year, currently this just looks like a gigantic battle that the Bears want to have out there. Because you're going to have St. Brown, you're going to have Pettis, you're going to have Tajay Sharp, who was just added, you're going to have David Moore, Daz Newsome. I don't really think they like Daz Newsome from who they've been signing, but still, he's probably going to be in the hunt for is he going to be able to play at that number three spot? Then you add in the rookie Velus Jones Jr. You have a lot of people that are competing, but it's do you really need to define that number three, or are you okay with people kind of being subbed in and subbed out? Because honestly, the more that I hear the Bears talk about Jones Jr., the more that it sounds like he's going to be a weapon rather than like a true slot or a true outside. It seems like he's going to be a game plan nightmare, which gets me excited because that's what I'm hoping that they use him as. Because Velus Jones Jr., the more that I watch him, the more he reminds me of Cordero Patterson. You watch him, he's a Cordero Patterson type of guy. So to me, I like him as more of that weapon. And I really hope that the Bears can actually use him as that weapon. But I digress. I think that the Bears offensive coordinator and their wide receivers coach is going to try and find somebody as that number three. But if I were the Bears, I would probably be trying to find a number 2. A number 2 and number 3, somebody to compete and to try and lock down the top 3 because I wanna help out Justin Fields as much as possible, and if he's throwing to this gigantic receiver combo, I don't really like that because you wanna get the timing down, you wanna get the routes down, so I would rather have somebody that you know is a starter rather than just have this constant battle, and majority of these guys probably won't stay for longer than a year. Just my take on some of this stuff. But let's go into the free agents. So, who is actually available? Now, if the Bears are looking to just add more depth to that, add more competition, there's a couple people. There's about 4 people that I look at. And what I look at too is I think that Tyke Tolbert, the wide receivers coach, I think he's trying to find somebody to that he can kind of unlock. Somebody that has played well in the past that he might want to bring in. And some of those names are an Adam Humphries. Remember him with Tampa Bay? Adam Humphries, very good player, but then all of a sudden, or very good, like couple 600-yard receiving seasons, and then all of a sudden fell off when he went over to Tennessee. Do they want to bring in someone like that to maybe see, hey, can we get something out of him? Also, same thing with like an Albert Wilson, very skilled at kind of breaking a big play, but might not be really all that great compared to who you currently have on this roster already. Tajay Sharp has put together a couple good seasons early on, and you might want to see just what does he have in the tank since you've already signed him. But 2 other people that the Bears might be looking at if they want to add a little bit more competition are 2 former Jags wide receivers, Allen Hurns, who's 30 years old, and Dede Westbrook. Both of them have had some pretty productive seasons with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but after that, never really amounted to too much. You could also kind of jot this up to, hey, somebody's got to get the catches out there, and it must have been Westbrook and Hurns. But still, I see those more as if you want to bring in competition and hopefully get something out of them. Those might be 4 guys with an Adam Humphries, Dede Westbrook, Albert Wilson, and Allen Hurns that you might want to be looking at. But now let's actually move over to these veterans because this is where, like, if I am bringing someone in, if I'm personally doing this, I want somebody that can come in, and a veteran would be great for Fields. You bring in a veteran that can kind of help him understand, like help coach him on the field as well, and be a reliable target as a veteran. I love the idea of bringing in a veteran, and I don't know why the Bears haven't necessarily done that. I know that we want to get younger, but a lot of these younger people that we're bringing in, do you expect Tajay Sharp to be here for longer than a year? Do you expect Dante Pettis to be here longer than a year? David Moore, if they make the team, or even like an Equinemius St. Brown? Do you really think he's going to, how long is he going to be here as well? Wouldn't you want to develop some chemistry or have someone who has a lot more experience than any of these guys come in? And that's why I like the idea of bringing in some sort of veteran. And this is also where you see a little bit more talent. Some of the veterans that are available are Julio Jones, T.Y. Hilton, Cole Beasley, Danny Amendola, Emmanuel Sanders, Deshaun Jackson, Mohamed Sanu, Tavon Austin, and Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I just want to upfront say this. I don't think Odell Beckham Jr. would ever go to the Bears. With his injury, I think he's truly going to be looking for more of a contender and then go on to that team later on after he gets healed up with his knee. I don't think he's going to be a Bear, but I just wanted to call him out as somebody who is out there that might want to just try and ring chase again, like he did last year, especially since he is a little bit banged up. But I want to actually just go back to a couple interesting names that are out there, and I want to start with Julio Jones. Now, I know a lot of people, I've seen this on the internet. A lot of people are saying, well, Julio Jones, he's washed up. Why would we want a washed up receiver? Well, if you watched him last year, this washed up receiver is better than Tajay Sharp. He's better than Equinemius St. Brown. He's better than Dante Pettis. He's better than any receiver washed up than any receiver that you have on this roster. He showed it. He showed it last year, and that's why I like the idea of at least calling up Julio Jones. Maybe he's going to be ring chasing. You don't know. Maybe he wants to show that he can do something, or he just wants to be productive, just wants to be on a team. And here he would be a very good target, veteran, future Hall of Famer that could really help out this room. I like the idea of at least bringing him in because, like I said, better than any other wide receiver that you have on the roster, not named Darnell Mooney or Byron Pringle. So to me, he can be that true number two wide receiver on the outside. And I think it could be really good for him and this overall team. Some other people I want to call out too is T.Y. Hilton. I know that he's got the former Colts connection, but to me, I think that he's a little bit too washed up to be able to be playing. Last year, you really saw his production just absolutely plummet, absolutely take a nosedive. So to me, like, I just think that T.Y. Hilton, I wouldn't bring him in, but obviously Eberflus would definitely know if he should come in or not. But I think that T.Y. Hilton is past his prime, past even just being a valuable receiver. So I don't think the Bears should necessarily go after him. But I had a couple more people that were starred as these veterans, and one is Cole Beasley. I really don't think that the Bears would go after him because they've preached about flexibility, about versatility. And Cole Beasley played over 80% of his snaps from the slot. While you see other kind of slot guys play about 50, he is truly just a slot receiver. But the thing that you can't deny is this guy really was instrumental with Josh Allen taking another step because Cole Beasley comes in and now he's one of his favorite targets, getting over 100 targets in multiple seasons. You want to talk about having somebody that Justin Fields can trust? Cole Beasley has showed that he is a very good option. Very old, definitely. I think he's about 33 years old, but still, Cole Beasley, he shows that he can be a slot only guy and be a very reliable target for your quarterback. Just something to think about, but I don't think that the Bears would ultimately do something like that. But I also want to call out Emmanuel Sanders just because another Bills wide receiver, great production with Josh Allen, really good. Take the top off the defense, and really ageless wonder right now. But he's going to be 35. He's 35, going to be 36. To me, when is he going to eventually start to slow down? He hasn't shown any signs, but still, you get a little bit nervous if you are signing him and saying, hey, you're our number two guy. But he could be a hidden gem that's at least sitting there if nobody really emerges from this wide receiver room. But then just going through the other ones, Deshaun Jackson seems a little washed up, and Mohamed Sanu and Tavon Austin, just I don't think that they give you that much of a boost compared to everybody else that's out there. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, you probably saw the thumbnail, and you're probably thinking that there's one other guy that I haven't mentioned that's on the thumbnail. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to my personal favorite for the Bears to sign, and that would be Will Fuller. Now, I know that Will Fuller is not that healthy, but I got to say, there's a lot of Bears fans that went crazy when we signed Dante Pettis. And Dante Pettis has been more banged up than Will Fuller in his career. And honestly, to me, Dante Pettis, that we have on our current roster, if he's healthy, he could be a good number three, but he hasn't been healthy. And to me, if you're bringing in Will Fuller, who yet again also hasn't been healthy, to be completely honest, he has that upside to be a number two receiver, though. When he's healthy, he's great. He plays phenomenally when he's healthy. And to me, like, he's got the great production, he's got the great speed. I think that him and Justin Fields would really hit it off because he reminds me a lot of those Ohio State wide receivers that he used to play with. I think that Will Fuller would be a phenomenal addition to this team. And why not? I guess that's the case. Like, why not potentially bring him in? You're not, hopefully, you didn't guarantee Equinemius St. Brown the starting number two wide receiver position because that would be awfully boneheaded of us. But really, you know that Tajay Sharp, Dante Pettis, Daz Newsome, David Moore, they're all competing. So to me, why not just go for a home run? Go for the home run with a receiver like a Will Fuller, because why not? Let me know what you think down in the comments because To me, he's my number one guy that I would love to see the Bears get because I still think we need that number two. And I think Fuller shows that he's a number two, even though that he might be banged up a little bit. But we're not winning the Super Bowl this year. I just want to at least, if he's good, maybe he signs a multi-year deal with us. Maybe he's healthy all year. You don't know, but he's at least way more talented than anybody else that we have there. So to me, I like Julio or Will Fuller. Otherwise, if I were the Bears, I would just try to duke it out and see what's out there. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Who would you want to add if you were Ryan Poles? But let's move on. We took a good chunk of time right there. But tight ends, this is pretty easy. We have O'Shaughnessy, we have Ryan Griffin, and honestly, I'm not huge fans of them. I think that they're solid. Don't get me wrong, but to me, Jesse James is still available. Blake Jarwin is not great, but to me, he's at least a little bit better than a Ryan Griffin as a number two tight end. We got rid of Jesper Horsted, our fourth string tight end. So you're putting a lot of hope in some undrafted rookie free agents to kind of be those guys as your number four. But you have Eric Ebron, Jesse James, Blake Jarwin, all available. Why not bring one of those guys in? Jesse James has a great rapport with Justin Fields. Why not bring him in? We saw it last year. So I just would like to see one of those guys at least come in. I think that it gives you a different dimension too. And Eric Ebron, former Colt, why not? That's all that I'm saying. I'm not losing sleep over the tight end position, but it would just be nice because you have those three options still available. There's still some other older vets like a Jared Cook, Jimmy Graham, Kyle Rudolph, Gronk. To me, Gronk doesn't count. He's going to be at Tampa. But really, the only one that kind of sticks out there would be a Kyle Rudolph, just because I think Jared Cook, Jimmy Graham, having those specifically built just for receiving, I don't think that the Bears roster would really want that. So honestly, I think that to me, Ebron, James, Jarwin, check them out. We'll see if the Bears actually go for it, but I think they might be looking like, hey, we already have a fullback, and that's kind of like a tight end too. So I can't see the Bears actually adding anybody here, but I would at least like for them to add some sort of better depth than like an O'Shaughnessy. But guys, now it's time for the offensive line. It's time for the big offensive line, and this is similar to the wide receivers, to an extent. So if you are building up this offensive line, what are you looking at? If you were to add somebody, who should Ryan Poles go after? What position? And when you look at this team, the Bears adding four rookie offensive linemen, to me, I don't think you need to add any depth. I think you're set on depth because you added four offensive linemen that were rookies. And then you also have Dozier as a backup. He's not good, but he's a backup. As long as he's your backup, then you have Davenport, you have Mustafer. So you have veteran backups and you have four rookies that will most likely be backups as well, unless one of them really kind of takes it to the next level. But when you look at this team, rumors are kind of swirling that the Bears like their second year tackles. They like Borom and they like Teven Jenkins. If that's true, this really kind of starts to form the offensive line. You don't need to bring in a veteran tackle because if you like Borom and you like Jenkins, then you don't have to touch anything. And it makes it easy because if you have the faith in them and if you've seen that they're good, then you don't have to do anything with that. But then you have Cody Whitehair as your left guard, Lucas Patrick pretty much cemented as your starting center, and now we get to the right guard position. If you're adding somebody, if I was in charge, I'm looking to fill that right guard spot because right now it's Sam Mustafer. And Sam Mustafer, I didn't really like him at center, and I think he's more of a true center. So if he's moving over to right guard, I think that there's going to be some decline in his play because I always said I like his head, but I don't like the way that he blocks. And if you're a right guard, it's all about blocking. And that to me is where he struggles when he actually has to block. Um, so to me, I don't like Mustafa at right guard, and we all know that Dakota Dozier is a giant turnstile. So to me, you're looking at this going, is there a rookie that I like out here? Obviously, you're hoping Zachary Thomas could be that starter because that would just be a gigantic blessing. but you don't necessarily want to bank on that, especially when you have a bunch of, six rounders and such that kind of occupy these backup spots. You don't want to bank on that because chances are maybe one of these guys will hit, but you don't want to completely bank on this. So if I'm the Bears, I'm looking to maybe fill out that roster spot. Now, we're already set at center, especially because we have Doug Kramer, Mustafer, and Lucas Patrick. But I want to just mention that there are two big name free agents that are still starting centers. I don't think that the Bears would ever sign these guys, but JC Treader and Matt Paradis. Matt Paradis, just a solid center, good center at the age of 33 that would just be productive for you. I don't see the Bears actually going after him, but he could be just a good center prospect in case if a Lucas Patrick were to go down. But JC Treader, you might have heard of him from the Cleveland Browns, a very good center, probably a top five over the past 5 years type of center. But why has nobody signed him? Now, the rumors around JC Treader are that he's kind of been banged up, that last year people were saying he never actually practiced. He just showed up on Sundays and played. He was that banged up. So the Browns said, deuces, you're too banged up to be playing, and got rid of him. So that's why a lot of people are very nervous about him. So it's not just as easy as, hey, sign this Pro Bowl caliber center and move Patrick over. I don't think that the Bears would sign them, but just in case if you were curious about JC Treader, that's the reason why he's just been banged up with injuries, and it's just been plaguing him, especially last year. Hence the reason why no one's really signing him, and he was also released. But also, I just don't see the Bears getting a center and moving over Lucas Patrick. And since Patrick has come in and been the leader of this offensive line and was told that he's going to be the center, I just don't see the Bears getting a center, but wanted to at least mention that there's people out there. But if we move over to the tackles, this is where there's still a lot of very good, talented veteran tackles. And like I said, if Borom and Jenkins are your guys and you're set on them, I don't see the Bears necessarily adding any of these veteran guys. But understandably, they are out there. And if they really don't trust Borom or they don't trust Jenkins, it might be smart to just bring one of these guys in if you don't think that he's the guy. But some of the vets that are just kind of pure tackles, Dwayne Brown, he's 36 years old, but man, he can still block. He's still a phenomenal left tackle. Instantly upgrade, instantly make it so that that left tackle spot is just completely locked down. Like I said, if you get him, you're moving Borum around, you're maybe moving Borum to a right guard spot, but you don't really want to be doing that because you want him to grow at that left tackle position if you do think that he's going to be your left tackle of the future. But some other guys that are out there too, Eric Fisher, he's just a severely okay left tackle. That's the way I describe him. Riley Reef, another very average tackle, and Jason Peters as well. Some of the guys that are more bottom of the barrel, in my opinion, Nate Solder and Brian Bulaga. Still 34 for Nate Solder and 33 for Bulaga, who's been often injured and more of a right tackle. So maybe he could shift over to right guard, but still a lot of these guys are just tackles. They're just tackles out there. So, like I said, I don't think that they're going to be adding any of these guys. But if you're looking at training camp, if you're looking at mini camp and you don't trust Borum, you don't trust Jenkins, I would instantly try to add one of these guys, add a Dwayne Brown, because then you know that you're solidifying one side of the line. But there's one guy that I really, really like, and low key, he is my favorite for the. If I was the Bears, I would sign him right now, and that's Darrell Williams, the former guard slash right tackle from the Buffalo Bills. I remember watching him as I was watching Ryan Bates, and now hopefully the Bears were watching some of his film and liked it, because he's not like the best blocker in the world, but he's a very good blocker for you. And he can play right tackle, right guard. He's going to be 30 years old this year. So relatively young for all the different free agents that are out there. And to me, you sign him, you just plug and play him. And to me, like you're not pissing anybody off because your rookies are most likely just going to be backups. So why not just bring this guy in that can really solidify this line? If you're telling me your line is Larry Borom and Teven Jenkins, and you feel confident in those guys as your tackles, and then you have Whitehair and Darrell Williams as your guards, I'm feeling good. And Lucas Patrick as your center. To me, this line, the biggest question mark are just really going to be those tackles, and that's it. I feel fairly confident in this offensive line if you add a Darrell Williams. So that's what I would do at least. Like I said, I like Darrell Williams because he can move into that right guard spot and be a good productive player for you. But let's actually just talk about the guards real quick. If the Bears were to add a guard, who would be available and who's out there? And this is the reason why I waited for guards for last, because guys, there's not a lot of good talent. Trey Hopkins, Billy Price, Alex Lewis. To me, I would not want the Bears to sign them. Yes, they were starters, but they were starters and they were not good. To me, I'd rather see a rookie. I'd rather see Mustafa, not Dozier, but I would rather just have a rookie go out there and see what they have, give them an opportunity rather than bring in someone that you kind of know is going to be bad. Some other people out there too, Greg Van Rotten, Lynette Duvernay-Tardif. These are two veteran right guards that you can bring in. And to me, they're more on the decline. They're about 32 years old, and they're not that great, in my opinion. But I would only bring them in if you're really looking at this in like training camp going, Mustafa just ain't it. And we have no rookies at this right guard spot. We got to bring these guys in. To me, they're that below average tier where if someone is bad, you can go, at least we can be below average at this spot. That's Greg Van Rotten, Duvernay-Tardif. I'm not a huge fan of them, but I think that they can at least kind of be below average players. But I have three more guys that I just want to bring up too. These two are long shots, and that's Kyle Long. Kyle Long, he played for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's always been injured. He hasn't played in 2 years. He hasn't played a regular season snap in 2 years, and he hasn't played over 1,000 snaps since 2015. We know that he's banged up. We know that he always gets injured. He's still not officially retired, and we know that Ryan Poles brought him in last year with Kansas City. Maybe does he want to bring him back in? Does he want to come back to the Bears? There's new management, so maybe, but I'm not holding my breath on this. And the last one, yet again, another very big long shot, but Richie Incognito. He's going to be 39 this year. Very old. Didn't play last year, but still hasn't officially retired. Can play left guard, right guard. Last time that he played, he did play fairly well. Just want to throw them out there because he is technically an option if you really wanted him. But the last guy that I want to bring up that would probably be my favorite if you needed to get a guard, and that would be Eric Flowers. Eric Flowers last year played for the Washington football team and really is not that bad when he got moved into the guard. He was a former top 10 pick for the Giants and was a really bad tackle, but as a guard last year, had a 97.5 pressure percentage, which means that he only gave up pressures on 2.5% of passing snaps, which is very good for a guard player. So to me, I like him as a guard, but he's only played left guard. Can you switch him over to right guard? It's something to at least check out. And he's in that 27, 28-year-old range. So he's yet again not that old, but he's a good athlete and has kind of seen a new life as an interior offensive lineman. So what do you think? Is there anybody that you think that the Bears should be getting? Let me know down in the comments. Like I said, to me, if I'm the Bears, I'm going after Will Fuller and Darrell Williams and trying to bring in somebody at that tight end spot. That's just what I would do. But like I said, let me know. Make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe. And it means so much that you guys listen to this show. Thank you all so much. And Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.